It's Fill Your Plate Now, where every bite brings you closer to the farm gate and further from what's unhealthy. Now, here's your hosts, Julie and Tammy, helping you live well by filling your plate well.
Well, Tammy, I think this is a very important topic and exciting because it's a current events type topic and it's something that's just been released. And now I hand the mic over to you. We're going to
Well,
be talking about the food pyramid.
we're talking about the dietary guidelines
Yes.
that reverse the food pyramid, right?
Yes.
And the dietary guidelines, there's been a lot of hubbub about it because,
Yep.
I have to say, it's revised every 5 years.
Right.
And they choose a panel of highly skilled scientific experts to peruse all of the latest scientific research to come up with the latest recommendations because, as we all know, science evolves. And so every 5 years, there may be some changes that need to be made. And I have to say, in the past, it seems like some of those changes have been very slight. But this year, it's getting a lot more attention
Right.
because, I mean, they basically turn the pyramid upside down.
Yeah.
And that's what the visual is. And
Right.
so there are not necessarily huge changes, but more than we normally see.
And I think the pictorial representation of it, just for ease of understanding for the consumer, may have made us feel like it was a little bit more dramatic, the change, than it actually is, right? Or
Yeah, yes,
yeah,
yes. And I think that's good
yeah,
because that draws attention and it's
exactly.
important. I mean, the dietary guidelines are released as the result of all the research that's been done and all of the findings that this scientific committee has seen in the research they reviewed, but they're taking all that and trying to consolidate it down to something we as consumers
Right.
can use.
Well, one of the things that I like, and I am getting that with clarity from you, Tammy, just because of your background. This is just not pulled out of a hat. People have to remember that it's every 5 years. There's a lot of scientific research that puts into it. This council, is it called a council that studies the research and the
They are scientific advisors that are
an advisory?
appointed
Okay.
to specifically review the dietary guidelines. And that it's not just these scientific advisors. They're looking at all the research that
Right.
has gone into nutrition and health and what the latest findings are. And there's also comment periods. So
Yeah.
organizations can comment on, we think this, and this should
Mhm.
change, or we really applaud this, and this staying the same.
Yeah.
So, it's really trying to involve the whole scientific community that revolves around food, nutrition, and keeping us healthy.
Yeah, so it's very important to understand the process that it takes and it took to bring us to these new dietary guidelines for Americans. It's a very important process. It's very science-based. It's very critical, and the idea is it's going to help you and I eat better.
Right. And the reason the dietary guidelines were established is because, nearly 90% of healthcare spending goes towards treating chronic disease. Much of that is linked to diet and lifestyle. More than 70% of American adults now are overweight or obese.
Heartbreaking.
I know nearly 1 in 3 adolescents is pre-diabetic. I mean, there are a lot of
Yeah.
health risks there. And these dietary guidelines are something that we can grab a hold of and actually implement to help ourselves stay healthier.
A colleague of mine, his mother was just diagnosed with diabetes and had no idea that that was. And, the colleague and I discussed it, and he said, "Yeah, she really needs to dial back her sugar. She also needs to kind of readjust what she eats."
Mhm.
So, that profile is not an unusual story, and yet if we would come back to the basics and come back to guidelines like these, I think those stories would become a little less common, hopefully. Hopefully.
Hopefully, and I will say one of the big emphases of the dietary guidelines this time is strongly discouraging ultra-processed foods
Okay.
and a lot of added sugar, meaning sugar that is added.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Not
but
natural sugar
not
like what you
natural sugar. There's
find in
natural
fruits.
sugar in
Yeah.
fruits,
Yep.
there's natural sugar in dairy. Um, there may even be a tiny bit of natural sugar in some vegetables,
Yeah.
but added sugars. In fact, they said that really they want you to limit the added sugars to less than 10% daily and less than 10 grams per meal.
Okay. So let's go down then and do some comparisons
Sure.
between the 2025 guidelines and the former guidelines basically, and then the guidelines just released. Again, based on scientific data
Mhm.
with experts, time for comment periods. So this wasn't just thrown together in a hat. And the only reason I want to emphasize that is some of the things you were telling me about what they have to go through to come to this
Mhm.
was very impressive. So I feel like what was put together, and yes, it looks like there were some changes that were fairly significant, but there's some that aren't. So I'm hoping that you will give me that guidance, like, from the previous guidelines to today's.
Right. Actually, the previous guidelines, I mean, the visual obviously has changed, and that's what's made the news, the flip pyramid.
Yeah.
But actually, the actual food pyramid that was right side up was not in the last dietary guidelines. It
Oh,
was further back. The most recent visual was called My Plate.
that's right. It
And
was
it
the
showed a
plate.
plate and then a place for the milk at the top.
Okay.
So they do change the visual periodically.
Mhm.
And I think they chose to do this upside down pyramid because they wanted to show that you want the most of the foods that are at the top and maybe a little less of some at the bottom rather than putting the ones you want less of at the top and then
Sure.
the other way around. But I think one of the really interesting things about this set of dietary guidelines is when you delve into the guidelines themselves, they're only about 9 to 10 pages long versus
Mm.
164 pages in the previous.
In the previous one. So it should be easier for me to digest the metaphor intended.
Yes, you should be able to digest this all in one
Okay.
setting. And also to take a look at these guidelines, they've established a new website called realfood.gov.
Okay, realfood.gov.
Yes, but I believe they did this in an attempt to make it more consumer friendly. I mean, the average person may not want to go through 164 pages,
Yeah.
even though it gives more in-depth explanations. A 9 to 10 page guideline is something that, you can get through
Yeah.
and you can look at and you can understand. And within that, they give the recommendations for each food group, and some of those have changed.
Okay. Let's talk.
Okay.
I'm all ears.
Well, first of all, one of the things that the number of servings has not changed is dairy. There's still
Good.
3 servings of dairy
Daily.
daily, milk,
Mhm.
cheese, and yogurt primarily. But
Mhm.
what has changed is due to a number of research studies. The dairy industry's done over 80 research studies on saturated fat and dairy fat in particular. And there is not a detrimental effect that has been found from whole fat dairy on your cardiovascular system. And in fact, there may be some benefits dealing with many of the other ailments. So, whole fat dairy has been added back, where
Awesome.
in previous dietary guidelines, it's been like low fat or non-fat dairy.
The whole fat dairy is so me. I just always liked whole milk. I couldn't get used to the low fat dairy. So I'm so glad they brought it back.
Well,
That's
and
a personal little
yeah, and I think
opinion
that's
there.
more consumer
Mhm.
friendly
Mhm.
because it's not saying exclusively eat whole fat dairy.
Right.
It's not saying exclusively eat non-fat dairy. It's saying, what is your preference? And it's making it a broader category to choose from,
Cool.
which is important for consumers to get the
Yep.
nutrient needs and the high quality protein that dairy provides.
Yep. I love that. Well, what else? So that's certainly a pretty cool thing to know. And you did talk about limiting the added sugar down to less than 10% or 10 grams a day.
10 grams per meal
Okay.
maximum is what they are
Okay.
recommending. The other big change is protein.
Okay.
There's been a lot of research out there that we need a little bit more protein. Well, the amount of protein before was 0.8 grams per kilogram body weight. It
Okay.
now is a range of 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilogram body weight, which means it's almost doubled from what it used to be.
In terms of the meat protein.
Yes,
Okay.
in terms of the protein group as a whole. And that means that you want to try to, get a serving of protein at every meal. And dairy also is a great source of protein. So if you're getting some dairy and some protein at every meal, you should be able to meet that guideline. But it is emphasizing that you really do need to get high quality protein to make sure you're maintaining your muscle mass and for all kinds of other um, bodily functions.
And
Protein
your
is very important.
and your milk and your meat proteins like beef, lamb, pork, chicken, fish, that can all be in the mix, and that's why we
Yeah.
see it at the top of the newly
And so
designed pyramid.
and the other thing at the top of the new pyramid is the fruits and vegetables.
Yeah.
This really hasn't changed. You need at least 2 servings of fruits, at least 3 servings of vegetables. That's very important too to provide a number of nutrients, and that has really remained the same. But you are seeing the protein group rise to the top in dairy as well as the fruits and vegetables.
Okay.
Um, Other changes, the carbohydrates and grains have decreased substantially. They used to be around 5 to 7 servings, now they're 2 to 4. But really what they're saying is they've always said you need more whole grains.
Okay.
And you need at least 2 to 4 servings of whole grains in your grain group.
Okay.
And now it's explicitly just saying you need 2 to 4 servings of grains and they need to be whole grains. And they're excluding some of that ultra processed food.
Right.
So that's why that went down to the bottom of the pyramid. Um, that's why that went down to the bottom of the pyramid. The whole grains are important, and you can have more than that if you want. But they wanted to make
Yeah.
sure you're having at least 2 to 4 servings of that.
Yeah. I was fascinated by it. And I have to give you the personal Julie Murphy farmer take. And then I have chatted with a few of my farmers. And like one of my ranchers said, well, Julie, we were always telling people that they needed to eat more protein. And now our scientists, our nutritionists are confirming that with these new dietary guidelines. And I've heard, so for my ranchers and myself personally, I'm excited to see that protein is being elevated to the level it is.
Mhm.
And then on the fruits and vegetables side of it, my crop farmers, if I talk to our Arizona Farm Bureau president, John Bolts, he's been evangelizing about eating more fruits and vegetables forever. And yes, he is a fruits and vegetable farmer, so he may have a bias, but he knows the high quality standards that he and the other farmers that produce our leafy greens and our other fruits and vegetables. And he knows, because the science has been saying that for quite some time, that fruits and vegetables are so healthy. So he's another one of my producers, so to speak, that's excited to see the elevation of the fruits and vegetables. Really, maybe not a change in the amounts, but the fact that they're out on the top of this inverted pyramid. And again, this is a picture for simplicity's sake,
Yes.
to make it a quick, easy, okay, we can see this. And we've even talked about it a little bit on our social media channels about new dietary guidelines underpinned by science and our nutritionists that know this stuff. This is not random. Wasn't thrown on a board. It was very scientific based. But to hear my farmers and ranchers talk about it, always stressing, we need to stick to the basics. And this new dietary guideline format gives that to us, I think.
It does. I mean, what it's really saying is we need real food.
Yeah, we need real food.
And real food starts
Yeah.
at the farm.
Yep.
and
Mhm.
eventually ends up on our plate.
Yep.
But the fewer additional ingredients added,
Yeah.
the purer the food is. So,
Yeah.
it is saying, yes, real food is good for you. We
Right.
really want to try to stick to that. And as you and I have said many times, if you shop the perimeter of the grocery store, you
Yep.
can find a lot of those real foods. It's important to look at the perimeter. And then it also is saying that, all foods can really fit
Mhm.
in a balanced diet. It's giving permission that uh, fats like butter and avocados and olive oils are all good fats
Mhm.
and in, moderate amounts,
I love
can be a part of your diet. But it also does state up towards the beginning of the dietary guidelines that you need to, moderate your intake.
Mhm.
So it is trying to get you to moderate your intake, take in real foods that are healthy and nutritious, and try to stay away from ultra processed.
You said it in a soundbite, and I think it works well. Okay, so I've gotta ask the question of the nutritionist, or who I call the nutrition ninja. I mean, when it first released, which was just last a few weeks ago,
Hmm.
did you kinda geek out? And did you say, "Oh, no, is it gonna be another 160-page report from the previous one?" Or, I mean, what was your excitement, or did you have any initial reactions that you can remember?
Well, I think I was excited at the simplicity of it because I think all of us who have a health and nutrition science background tend to want to explain every little thing and go into great depth,
Right.
and we lose people somewhere along the way. So, keeping it simple, saying eat real foods,
Yep.
eat more of these things, eat less of the processed stuff, that is an easier guideline to follow.
Yeah, it was funny when you and I were talking just before the show. I was kind of just celebrating again the point that the graphic makes it easier to see that yes, we can tap into
Mhm.
to real food. And I know that you had needed to emphasize for me, but Julia, this is all scientific based. There's a whole advisory team. There's even a comment period, and I go, you're right, but I'm just excited about the picture.
Well,
So,
and the picture is there just to give that
right,
overarching message,
yeah,
but you really do have to dig into the guidelines to understand how many servings you need of
right,
various foods. And, there's also controversy. I mean, some felt that saying whole fat dairy and saturated fats in the diet shouldn't be there. But they still say that no more than 10% of your diet should be coming from saturated fats. It's giving you permission to have whatever you like
right.
and still keeping eating in moderation.
In a balanced, moderated diet, which is what we all should have been keeping in mind even before some of these
Hmm.
new guidelines. Um, we are blessed, we're spoiled. There is, for most Americans, an abundance of food, and sometimes we don't know when to, based on our weight, based on our profile, when to turn that eating spigot off, for lack of a better term. But I mean, it's just exciting to me that, to your point, it gets back to real food and emphasizing proteins. Protein's so important for us. The fruits and vegetables, the dairy products, the eggs. I just, I feel like we're seeing the supply chain, the food supply chain from the farm gate to the plate with more clarity. And then to your point, if we study some of the data a little bit, we can understand just exactly what those amounts are.
Yes, and there will be more that comes out following this to further define it
Yep,
for individuals and help with how do you translate all this
yep.
into your meal plans, or if you have allergies, how do you, make
Yeah.
changes in what's recommended to make sure you're still getting all the nutrients you need, or, at different age levels. They briefly address different age groups and needs, but you'll probably see a little bit more on that.
Okay. It's
So
kind of a rollout, really,
yes, and I
sort of.
mean, and
Yeah,
that's where health professionals come in too. They
right.
take this as the base, and then depending on someone's dietary needs, can carve out a diet for them that will work for that individual.
Perfect. So on that, where should I go and others go to, look at the guidelines, look at the report. What's the website? Real Food.
Realfood.gov
Okay.
is the website that has all of the dietary guidelines on it. And so, you know, if you just remember that you want to eat real food and
Yeah.
go to realfood.gov to get more specific recommendations on serving sizes and what that would look like, then you'll have it all taken care of.
Knowing that that's not necessarily your role, you're the general manager for the Arizona milk producers and you're front and center, your expertise is in dairy. Well, your expertise is all along the food supply chain when it comes to eating, but dairy is certainly it. Have you ever, when a close friend has maybe come to you and said, Tammy, can I exploit your expertise? Can you help me with my diet? So now, would you tap into this for them if somebody and basically what I'm asking you is, can you put together a diet for me? I'm just kidding.
Can you help
But
me with my diet?
can you help me with my diet?
Uh,
But I mean, with the guidelines and with the way it's structured and then your background, that's something you could do for someone, right? Or am I making
Yes, I mean, this is the general guidelines. And there are offshoots,
Yeah.
from that depending on what your specific nutrition needs are. If you have allergies, if you're trying to gain weight, if you're trying to lose weight, if you have any kind of medical conditions, there's a lot of things that go into play when you go to see a health professional, a dietitian, to help prescribe the right kind of diet for you.
Right.
But I mean, definitely it's easy to provide someone with the basic guidelines,
Mhm.
but to get more specific to their actual needs.
Especially if they have a condition like diabetes and stuff, they probably need to tap into somebody that's their medical area of expertise. But
Exactly.
the point being, there's a layout there for some generalized guidelines.
Mhm.
If I ever had any questions for you, wow, okay. So they're really emphasizing protein, Tammy. Why do you think that? And you could give me some insights on that. So I guess too, what we need to realize is um, we need to tap into the nutrition world and our nutritionists to realize, and we've had such a cadre of really interesting people in the last year so far,
We
since
have.
we're now going into our second season. And I've just been amazed at some of their areas of specialty, like, you know, areas of specialty for athletics. The professor that his specialty is hydration. So we have to have a lot of appreciation and respect for people that have an expertise in nutrition.
Yes, and I also think too, you know, you have to keep in mind, there's so many things we can't control
Mhm.
with our health. But one thing we can control is what we eat.
Yeah.
And that can make a substantial impact. So whether you're a mom trying to feed your children healthier diet, or whether you may have some special medical conditions you're trying to keep under control, or
Yeah.
whether you just want to have a
Mhm.
little more energy. I mean, really how eating real foods and following the basic guidelines can help. And then if you have special needs above and beyond that, it's important to seek out a registered dietitian.
Okay. What else? Any final thoughts? I mean, some of the stuff was just a little bit more simplified. It's not as Is it fair for me to say it's not as dramatic as maybe what people might have been expecting when it was coming out?
Well, science generally does not make huge leaps and bounds
Right.
of dramatic from one
Mhm.
swing to the other because the information has, studies have been done and redone, and information has to be cumulative, and you have to make sure that it's accurate and it's
Right.
peer reviewed and all of those things, and that just takes time. So you generally do not see huge sweeping changes. I think what you can take away from the new dietary guidelines is it's really emphasizing real food, really
That's good.
emphasizing minimizing ultra processed food, saying that you need more protein, that all um, that all types of dairy can fit, whole fat dairy as well as low fat and non fat. All of them are appropriate. And it's also reducing the amount of grains in the diet, but emphasizing that they need to be whole grains.
Excellent. So what are you gonna go home and eat for dinner tonight?
I've talked about food all day. I don't know if I want to
So
fix dinner.
I am gonna, because I laid it out, I'm
Mhm,
gonna have fish, and that's at the top of this inverted pyramid.
mhm,
We see salmon in the graphic.
mhm.
The I'm gonna have a white fish, and then I'm gonna have asparagus for my veggie. And you know what I love lately? I'm gonna have a couple spoonfuls of cottage cheese.
Oh, that's a great source of protein, and
Yeah.
you can put a little butter on your asparagus, and you'll be all set.
That's what I plan to do. So, yeah,
So
this has been great.
this is fun, and more to come on
Yeah.
on these new dietary guidelines. I'm sure they will continually work at um, defining how you can implement this in your diet. But really, some very positive things in these
Yeah,
new
I think
dietary
so too.
guidelines, and I think making it much more consumer friendly.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. Any takeaways that we should be I know that I'm gonna go to realfood.gov, right? And, another takeaway for me is that it's a if I might say, it's kind of neat to see some of those most all those items that we provide here in Arizona agriculture, the protein meats, the vegetables, the dairy, the eggs, the fruits. So it's exciting to me. I feel like I'm seeing agriculture in that pyramid, that inverted pyramid.
And when they were doing the press release on all of this, they were talking about how important it is to support our farmers and our ranchers
Oh, great.
because that's where the food is coming from.
Mhm.
And that's the real food
That's
that
real
we want
food.
want to be eating.
Good. Well, thank you, Tammy.
Thank
This is
you.
very insightful. I'm hungry.
Let's go eat.
Let's go eat. I'm ready.